So from the perspective of Warhammer 40,000, do you still have to use Games Workshop miniatures? This was an interesting question that I was asked, and I realized in starting to answer this question, I'm probably going on outdated or old information. So I figured let's kick it out there and let's open it up to the meta and see what we can see. The question being, do you have to use Games Workshop miniatures to play Warhammer 40,000? And to what element do your miniatures have to be represented by the army or the faction that you're playing? And I'm not talking about taking Tau and proxying them for Space Marines. So a number of years ago, and not that long ago, so this is not like, well, back in my day of 40K, this is not that long ago. You're talking 6, 8, 10 years, which in the scope of the hobby is not a long time if you've been playing 40K for a while. Certainly if you just started this year, that seems like a long time. But it's interesting to see how Games Workshop has realigned their business model to the point where they don't really support independent hobbyists. They don't have the support like they used to with Games Day, Grand Tournaments, Rogue Trader tournaments. If you were a club or if you were a store, years ago we would run a tournament. Games Workshop would send us prize support. They would send boxes and boxes of terrain and miniatures and paints and hobby stuff. Now it's the independent stores sending that because they want to get the billing, at the tournament, or they want to get that feedback in supporting a tournament. We used to see in the stores, not just the battle bunkers that you would play in, but even the smaller stores that would encourage you to play 40K. The idea was that hobby was supported in store, and this is leading to miniatures. I always saw that because it was a pipeline. It was kind of a revenue stream, a passive income stream. Now, this is how it worked for me. I don't want to speak for you, but you can drop in the comments, yes or no. I show up to play 40K on Sunday. I win. I have a great time. Well, I always have a great time. I win. Tabletop Immortality is mine. I'm pumped. I'm excited. I'm buying a new unit. I'm buying some sort of miniature model because I need to celebrate my victory in the name of the immortal emperor of mankind. So I'm walking out of that store with something. I lose. I get crushed. All right, I'm a little salty, a little sad face for 10 minutes or so, but I still have a good time. I got to buy some more miniatures. I got to buy some stuff so I show up next week and wreck face and get my revenge. So by the fact of playing in a supported store or a supported environment, you're going to buy more product and also paints, because I'm always still spilling my washes, and maybe you need some brushes, maybe you need some other things in that moment. Independent stores, that's a major revenue stream. That's an important revenue stream. And it used to be with the Games Workshop stores that was, although I don't see that. So where this plays into it, when Games Workshop was actively supporting things, there was a rule. I don't remember the exact number. It was like 80%. The grand tournaments used to have to fill out the form, and they would look. 80% had to be Games Workshop miniatures. Games Workshop. So if I had a Space Marine, 80, or maybe it was 90%. Let's just say it was 80. 80% of that model had to be from the Games Workshop ranges. Now, they picked that number because certainly they want to encourage conversions. They want to encourage cool armies and modeling, because that just makes 40K look that much more amazing. And you want to have that creative element of the hobby. But by enforcing that 80% rule of plastic or green stuff and metals and other pieces at that moment, that keeps the integrity of forcing you to buy those miniatures to play 40K. And it was always interesting because friends of mine that have been wargaming for a long time, they know about Warhammer 40,000, but they are primarily historical wargamers, DBA, DBN, World War II historicals. And that's a completely different area of the hobby because it's miniature independent. You pick the scale that you want to play at, but there's 5, 6, 10 different miniature companies that will sell these miniatures. It's the rules driving the game, where Games Workshop, their business model, of course, is the miniatures driving the game. So the game only exists for us to buy more miniatures. each month. I mean, that's their business model. Nothing wrong with that. That's how they stay in business, and that's how they deliver this product to us. But in playing that, that means they used to really enforce that concept of you have to be 80%. You have to use Games Workshop miniatures. Now that leads to some creative circumstances. A great example was a plague-based army for 40K, where you could spawn zombies and have the zombie hordes, back when like the zombie cultist hordes used to be big. You needed to put down a lot of zombies and a lot of cultists on the table. So the easiest way to do that was to pull in from Warhammer Fantasy. There was this crossover, either Warhammer Fantasy or Age of Sigmar, pull in some of the undead models, because you could buy just masses and masses of them, model them up a little bit, throw a couple of las guns on the back, and you're ready to go. So there was this crossover between product ranges, but it was still Games Workshop. Then you would see stuff with the 80% rule where you might have had Imperial Guard, but you wanted to do completely different head swaps. You wanted to do Elysian drop troops, or you wanted to pull in some stuff from Starship Troopers. I saw a great army from that perspective. So you would go to third party and buy different heads. Or if you were doing Chaos Space Marines for a while, there were Raptors, Assault Marines, different chainswords, different backpacks. You would pull that in. So it was a great way to customize your army. Does that even still exist? I don't know. I don't think so. Now, certainly many of us play, I was going to say many, I think all of us tend to play with Games Workshop miniatures because it is a visual type game. I play Necrons not only for the narrative, because also, in my opinion, the models look kind of cool. So I want to pull in those models. I want to utilize those models. I like how Land Raiders look, so I want to play a Land Raider. I don't know if there's people out there that say, look, I'm going to get into 40K because I like the rules and I like Imperial Guard, so I'm always going to call it Imperial Guard. But I'm not going to play any of Games Workshop miniatures. I'm going to use something else. And if that was true, would that even be enforced? So that's the question I ask you guys. Is that still regularly enforced? Is that still regularly even a thing from the point of view of Games Workshop, or perhaps playing at your local store? Now, I will say it kind of has been going the other way, in that I posted up to my archives here under my channel, Chain of Command. This is a historical World War II rule set. One of the best rule sets that I've ever played. I mean, the phases of the game, the rules, the dynamic tension of it. It's a pretty amazing game in what it captures. It's such a good rule set, I've used it with Warhammer 40,000. I mean, even uttering that has immediately attracted the ears and eyes of the Inquisition now, possibly reporting me for heresy, thumbs down for heresy on this vlog. But I have taken my Warhammer 40,000 miniatures. I've taken my Space Marines, and I've taken my Eldar, my Footdar, and played them using the Chain of Command rule set with their historical army lists for World War II. So instead of a machine gun, I've got a heavy bolter. As just rifles, I've got bolters. For Eldar, if I have a heavy weapons support team, it's a support battery. There are other ways to expand and utilize and capture that narrative for Warhammer 40,000. And what's interesting is how much it's opened up gaming possibilities, modeling possibilities, where we're pulling in for visuals, and it's not just, wow, I've got 9 Eldar support batteries I can't use anymore because GW trashed the rules. I bring them over to new rule sets. I'm getting the narrative. I'm getting the use in the miniatures. And I'm not saying that's ever going to be a mainstream thing, or I'm never going to say that the community is going to go rules independent, but I'm just curious. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys now in the comments. Do you have a 40K army that has no 40K whatsoever in it? And if you do, I would love to see it. Drop like a link to an album, or drop it somewhere that I could see it. If you have a converted army where you're like, Fritz, I've put so much love into this army, it's like it's like a Mechanicus tech priest. There's like 10% human. The rest has all been augmented. Bringing that army, like let's say you've got a 20% army, but it's fantastic. It's love. If it's taken you months, maybe a year to convert, would that be turned away at an event? I wouldn't, and I couldn't even see that happening. But we are talking about Games Workshop.